Welcome to the world of suspense, mystery, and mind-bending drama. This is not just a story, it's an experience. In today's episode, you're about to enter a world where nothing is what it seems, where trust is a dangerous game, and every decision could be your last. This is the beginning of something unforgettable. So listen carefully because every detail matters. Are you ready to dive into a world of crime, love, betrayal, and suspense that will leave you on the edge of your seat? Stay tuned for the first chapter of our long and thrilling journey. Trust me, you won't want to miss a second of it. Part 1. The beginning of chaos. City of Shadows was a place where no one knew your name unless you wanted them to. It wasn't on any map. A city built on secrets, lies, and the most dangerous people you could imagine. Those who ran the city weren't the politicians or the businessmen, but a group of underground figures who controlled every illegal trade, every dirty deal, and every unsolved crime. It's where our story begins. Meet the characters. 1. Ava Carter, 28 years old, sharp, ambitious, and working as a private investigator. She has a past she never talks about, and that past is slowly catching up to her. 2. Marcus Reaper Jones, 32 years old, the most wanted criminal in the country. He's a mastermind in the world of heists and has never been caught. But there's a price on his head, and betrayal lurks everywhere. 3. Lena Graves, 26 years old, a hacker with a genius-level IQ who can break into any system. She's worked for governments and criminals alike, but now she's hiding from someone dangerous. 4. Officer Daniel King, 30 years old, a police officer with a dark secret. He's on a mission to bring down the crime world of City of Shadows. But is he really on the side of justice, or does he have his own agenda? The story begins. It all started with a phone call at 3 a.m. Ava was used to getting late-night calls from clients with problems that seemed too big for them to handle. But this call was different. The voice on the other end was shaky, almost terrified. "Ava, it's Marcus. I need your help." Marcus, the notorious criminal mastermind, the man the police had been chasing for years, was asking for help. Ava's heart raced, but her face stayed calm. She knew she was about to step into a game far bigger than she ever imagined. Meanwhile, in the darkest corner of the city, Lena Graves was sitting in front of her computer screen, watching as numbers and codes flashed by. She was good at hiding, but lately, she had the feeling someone was watching her. Someone who knew every move she made. Officer Daniel King stood in his office, looking at a wall covered in crime scene photos, red strings connecting pieces of evidence, creating a map of chaos. He wasn't just chasing criminals. He was chasing the truth, something that had been buried for too long. Marcus had stolen something no one knew about but everyone wanted. The contents of a black briefcase that could take down the biggest corporations in the world. A briefcase so powerful it could destroy lives, governments, and entire nations. But now, Marcus was in trouble. There were people after him, dangerous people. And if he didn't act fast, his life would be the next in a series of high-profile disappearances in the city. He had 2 choices. 1, run, disappear like a ghost, and never be seen again. 2, fight and take control of the game. But to win, he needed Ava. She wasn't just any private investigator. She had skills no one else did, a mind that could solve puzzles no one could figure out. And she had a connection to the case she didn't even know about yet. A week ago, Marcus and his team had pulled off the biggest heist the city had ever seen. It was supposed to be flawless, but something went terribly wrong. One of his team members had been killed in the middle of the heist, and now Marcus didn't know who he could trust. All he knew was that the briefcase had vanished. Lena, the best hacker in the city, had been tracking it for days, but it seemed like it had disappeared from every system in the world. Ava knew getting involved with Marcus was a risk, but something about this case drew her in. Maybe it was a thrill, maybe it was a mystery, or maybe it was a feeling that her past was somehow tied to this. As she dug deeper, she started finding clues that didn't make sense. Every person who had touched that briefcase seemed to either vanish or end up dead. The more she searched, the more it felt like someone was pulling the strings from behind the scenes, a puppet master controlling everything. And soon, she realized that everyone in the city, even the police, was in on this game. But what was the end game? What was in that briefcase that could bring so much death and destruction? As Marcus, Ava, Lena, and Officer King's paths crossed, each of them began to realize they were part of something much bigger than just a heist. Someone had been watching them, manipulating their moves, and playing a game of life and death. And soon, they would have to face the real enemy, an unknown force more dangerous than they could ever imagine. Part 2. The shadows grow darker. The city had a pulse, a dark, dangerous pulse that only a few could feel. Marcus sat in the dim light of a broken street lamp, his phone clenched in his hand. He knew things were about to spiral out of control, but there was no turning back now. The game had started, and there was only one rule: survive. Ava couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her. After Marcus's call, she knew she was in deep, but she hadn't expected the danger to escalate so quickly. Her apartment had been searched while she was gone. Everything looked untouched, but she could sense it. Someone had been there, looking for something, leaving a message. "We're watching you." Determined not to back down, she dove deeper into the case. She started tracing the movements of Marcus's team the night of the heist, searching for any clue about who might have betrayed them and what had gone wrong. That's when she found it, a video file buried deep within a police database. The footage showed Marcus's team in action, but halfway through the recording, the screen glitched. And then, for just a moment, a shadowy figure appeared, standing in the corner of the room, watching the heist unfold. Someone was controlling them all along. Meanwhile, Marcus was running out of time. His contacts had gone silent, his money was running dry, and now he was being hunted by people who weren't afraid to kill. He thought the briefcase was just another payday, a way to retire and disappear. But now, it was clear. The briefcase held something far more dangerous than he ever realized. Inside the briefcase were encrypted documents that, if revealed, could bring down the most powerful organizations in the world. Governments, corporations, criminal empires. Everyone had something to lose, and now they were all coming for Marcus. The only person who could help him now was Lena, the hacker who had gone off the grid. But Lena was in her own kind of trouble. Lena's safe house had been compromised. She was used to hiding, but this time was different. Someone had managed to track her down, despite her best efforts to cover her tracks. Whoever was after her wasn't just a skilled hacker. They were a ghost, someone who could move through the digital world without leaving a trace. Late one night, while trying to hack into the system to recover the missing briefcase, her computer suddenly froze. The screen went black and a single message appeared. "You're next." Lena's heart pounded. She knew she was in danger, but she couldn't just run. Not now. The briefcase was the key to everything, and if she didn't crack its code soon, everything would be lost. Officer Daniel King sat in his squad car, staring at the dashboard. The guilt was eating him alive. He wasn't the hero the world thought he was. He wasn't the brave cop chasing down criminals to make the city safer. He had made a deal with someone who was far more dangerous than Marcus. Years ago, Daniel had taken money from a powerful criminal syndicate in exchange for information. It started small, just a tip-off here, a piece of intel there, but it had grown into something he could no longer control. Now, they had him on a leash, and if he didn't deliver Marcus, they would expose him and destroy his life. But Daniel had his own plan. He was tired of being a puppet. He was going to play both sides, take the briefcase for himself, and disappear. But he wasn't the only one with that plan. As Ava continued to investigate, she found herself being pulled deeper into a web of lies. She had finally tracked down Lena's location, hoping the hacker could provide answers. But when she arrived at Lena's hideout, she found the door unlocked, the place trashed. Lena was gone. A single bloodstained note was left on the floor. It read, "You're running out of time." Ava's phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "We need to meet. Now." Marcus had arranged a meeting at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was risky, but they didn't have a choice. As Ava arrived, she noticed something was off. There were no guards, no lookouts, just an eerie silence. She stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. Marcus was waiting for her, but before she could say a word, the door slammed shut behind her. She spun around, heart pounding, as shadowy figures emerged from the darkness. A voice echoed from the shadows. "You thought you could outsmart us, Marcus? You thought you could steal from us and walk away?" A tall figure stepped into the light. He wore a black suit, his face hidden behind a mask. Ava didn't recognize him, but the cold look in his eyes sent a chill down her spine. This wasn't just any criminal. This was someone with power, someone who had been pulling the strings all along. The masked man moved closer to Marcus, his voice calm but deadly. "The briefcase, Marcus. Where is it?" Marcus stood tall, his jaw clenched. He wasn't going to give in that easily. "I don't have it," Marcus replied, his voice steady. The masked man chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down Ava's spine. "I know you don't have it, but you know who does, and you're going to help us get it back." Ava realized too late that this had been a setup from the start. Marcus had been caught in a game far bigger than even he had anticipated. And now, she was trapped in it too. Ava, Marcus, and Lena were no longer just players in a heist gone wrong. They were now part of a deadly game of power, corruption, and betrayal. And the stakes were higher than they ever imagined. As the masked man gave his final warning and disappeared into the shadows, Ava knew they had no choice. They had to find the briefcase before their enemies did. But the more they searched, the more they realized the truth. There was no one they could trust. What happens next? As tensions rise and the clock ticks, Ava and Marcus are forced to confront their own pasts. Who is the masked man? What deadly secrets lie within the briefcase? And how far are they willing to go to survive? Part 3. The Descent into Chaos. The city, once teeming with life, now seemed like a ghost town for those trapped in its shadows. Marcus, Ava, and Lena had only scratched the surface of a much larger, darker game. The briefcase was no longer just a job. It had become the key to their survival. But every move they made brought them closer to the edge. Ava paced a cold, dimly lit room. After narrowly escaping the trap at the warehouse, her nerves were frayed, but she couldn't stop now. The masked man had made it clear, this wasn't just about money. This was about control. Whoever had the briefcase held the power to shift the balance in the criminal underworld. And Ava had been pulled into a war she never wanted to be a part of. She glanced at Marcus, who sat on a chair, his face grim, deep in thought. "We have to find Lena before they do," Ava said, breaking the silence. "She's our only hope of unlocking the briefcase." Marcus rubbed his hands over his face. He was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. He nodded. "We don't even know where she is. And whoever is after us, they're not just playing around. They're watching everything." Ava took a deep breath, knowing the risks. She knew they were running out of time. "I have a contact," she said slowly. "Someone who can help us find Lena, but it's dangerous." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "More dangerous than what we're already in." Ava hesitated. "Let's just say, this person isn't exactly a friend, but they owe me a favor." Marcus knew there was no other choice. "Do it." Ava's contact was a man who went by the name the Raven. He was known for operating in the deepest corners of the criminal world. No one knew his real name or what he looked like. All they knew was that he was a master manipulator, capable of pulling strings from the shadows. Ava had crossed paths with the Raven years ago when she was a young detective. He had helped her on a case, but his price had been steep, one that left Ava haunted by her decision to this day. She had vowed never to go back to him, but now she had no choice. They arranged to meet in a deserted part of the city. As Ava and Marcus approached the meeting spot, tension filled the air. The alley was dark, lit only by a single flickering light. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence. Ava's heart raced as she stepped into the alley. She knew this was risky, but they needed information, and the Raven was the only one who could get it. A figure emerged from the shadows, his face hidden beneath a dark hood. The Raven spoke in a low, calculated voice. "Ava, I knew you'd come back to me eventually." Ava swallowed her fear. Asterisk, "I need information. We're looking for a hacker, Lena. I know you can find her." The Raven chuckled, a cold sound that made Marcus's skin crawl. "Ah, Lena, the elusive one. She's good, too good, but I can find her. The question is, what are you willing to give me in return?" Ava stiffened. She knew the Raven would ask for something big. "Name your price." The Raven stepped closer, his face still hidden in the shadows. "Your freedom, Ava. I want you working for me." Ava's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Working for the Raven meant becoming a puppet in his game, forever tied to his dark world. Marcus clenched his fists, but Ava held up her hand, signaling him to stay calm. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me," Marcus growled, stepping forward. The Raven laughed softly. You're a small piece in a much bigger game, Marcus. But don't worry, you both will be mine soon enough." Ava's mind raced. She had no choice but to agree for now. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "Just find Lena." The Raven smiled, though his face was hidden. "You've made the right choice. I'll be in touch." Lena had been on the run for days. After the break-in at her safe house, she knew she couldn't trust anyone. She moved from one underground hideout to the next, trying to stay one step ahead of her pursuers. But she could feel them closing in. Every time she hacked into a system, every time she tried to trace the origins of the briefcase, someone was watching. Late one night, as Lena sat hunched over her laptop in a dingy, abandoned apartment, her phone buzzed. She picked it up cautiously. The screen showed a message from an unknown number. "You're not as invisible as you think, Lena." Panic surged through her veins. She looked around, her paranoia growing by the second. The walls seemed to close in, and every shadow in the room felt like it was hiding something or someone. Lena quickly shut down her laptop and grabbed her bag. She couldn't stay in one place for too long. She had to keep moving. But as she opened the door to leave, a cold voice came from the hallway. "Going somewhere, Lena?" She froze. There, standing in the doorway, was a tall figure, dressed in black, his face hidden by a mask, similar to the one that had confronted Marcus and Ava. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as the figure stepped closer. "You've been very hard to find," the masked man said, his voice smooth and menacing. "But it's time to come with me." Lena's mind raced. She had two options: fight or run. Without thinking, she slammed the door shut and bolted toward the fire escape. Her only chance was to get to Marcus and Ava before they got to her. Lena ran through the narrow alleys of the city, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, the sound of footsteps echoed, growing louder with each passing second. She darted around corners, trying to lose her pursuers, but they were relentless. She pulled out her phone and sent a single message to Marcus. "I'm being followed. Meet me at the old train station. 10 minutes." Marcus received the message as he and Ava drove through the city. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. "We have to get there before they do," Marcus said, his voice tense. They sped through the streets, the sound of sirens and distant gunfire filling the air. The city was descending into chaos, and it felt like they were in the middle of a war zone. The old train station was abandoned, its once grand architecture now crumbling and covered in graffiti. It was the perfect place for a secret meeting, and a trap. Lena arrived first, her heart still racing from the chase. She scanned the area, making sure she wasn't being followed. But something didn't feel right. The silence was deafening. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't Ava. It was the masked man. Before Lena could react, he grabbed her by the arm and whispered in her ear, "You didn't think you could run forever, did you?" As Marcus and Ava arrived at the train station, they found the place eerily quiet. No sign of Lena. No sign of anyone. "Something's wrong," Ava muttered. Suddenly, they heard a voice echo through the station. The masked man stepped out from behind a pillar, dragging a terrified Lena with him. "You're too late," he said with a sinister smile. Marcus reached for his gun, but the masked man shook his head. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. If you want to see Lena alive, you'll do exactly as I say." Ava's mind raced. This was it, the moment of truth. The briefcase, the heist, everything had led to this. And now, they were at the mercy of a man they didn't even know. To be continued. The stakes have never been higher. Who is the masked man? What is his true plan? And how will Marcus, Ava, and Lena escape the deadly web of lies they've been caught in? Part 5. The Unraveling Truth. Ava and Marcus moved quickly through the narrow streets, each step fueled by desperation. Marcus was bleeding from the gunshot wound, and Ava knew they didn't have much time. Officer Daniel King had revealed a terrifying truth. They were being hunted by forces they didn't fully understand. But now, with the betrayal of a trusted officer and Lena's murder, everything felt like a race against time. They ducked into an alley, finding brief cover as Ava ripped a piece of her shirt to bandage Marcus's shoulder. "We can't keep running like this," Marcus muttered through clenched teeth. "We need a plan, and we need to figure out who's pulling the strings." Ava nodded, her mind racing. Lena's death had shaken her to the core, but it had also lit a fire of revenge inside her. Whoever was behind this, they would pay. The question was, who? "We need to track down the briefcase," Ava said. "It's the only way to expose whoever's behind this." She took a deep breath and continued. "Lena left us a clue before she died. The list of names she compiled, it all connects. Officer King was involved, but there's more to this. Someone powerful is calling the shots." Marcus winced as he adjusted his position. "And whoever it is, they want us dead before we can figure out who." Suddenly, Ava's phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen from an unknown number. "Meet me at Pier 17. I have the answers you're looking for." Ava's heart skipped a beat. Pier 17 was an abandoned dockyard on the edge of the city, a place where deals happened in the shadows. It was dangerous, but this was their only lead. "Pier 17, Marcus said, reading the message over her shoulder. "Sounds like a trap." Ava hesitated. "It might be, but it's the only chance we've got." The night was heavy with fog as they approached Pier 17. The sound of waves crashing against the docks filled the air, but there was no sign of life. Ava's nerves were on edge, every shadow seeming to shift, every sound amplified. They approached the main dockyard building cautiously, guns drawn. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of damp wood. The dim lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a woman, a tall, confident figure with piercing eyes. Ava tensed, her gun aimed at the woman. "Who are you?" The woman raised her hands in surrender, her eyes calm. "My name is Eliza. I know what's happening to you. I know who's behind all of this." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "And why should we trust you?" Eliza took a step forward. Because I used to work for them. Ava's grip on her gun tightened. Them? Who are they? Eliza sighed, her expression grave. The Syndicate, a criminal organization with deep connections in law enforcement, government, and the underworld. They control everything: drug trafficking, arms deals, assassinations. Officer King wasn't lying when he said they own him. They own everyone. And they want you dead because you've stumbled onto their biggest operation yet. Ava and Marcus exchanged a glance. The briefcase, Marcus said. Eliza nodded. That briefcase contained sensitive information, evidence that could bring down the entire syndicate. But it's not just about the crimes they committed. There are names in that briefcase. High-profile names. If that information gets out, it could expose politicians, judges, and even police chiefs. Ava's heart pounded. So, this is bigger than we thought. They're killing anyone who gets close to the truth. Exactly, Eliza replied. They've been eliminating people for years. Anyone who knew too much. Lena was just the latest victim. Ava felt a surge of anger. Lena had died for this. Why are you telling us this now? Because I'm done running, Eliza said firmly. I want to bring them down, and I need your help. You're the only ones who can expose the syndicate. But first, we need to get that briefcase before they find it. Ava and Marcus stood in silence for a moment, weighing their options. Trust was in short supply, but they had no other leads. All right, Ava said finally, we'll work together, but if you betray us. I won't, Eliza interrupted. I have just as much to lose as you. The next few days were a whirlwind of danger and deception. Ava, Marcus, and Eliza worked together to track down the briefcase, following leads through the darkest corners of the city. Each step brought them closer to the truth, but also closer to the syndicate's crosshairs. They narrowly escaped several attempts on their lives, including a harrowing chase through the city's underground tunnels. The syndicate was closing in, and time was running out. Finally, their search led them to an old, abandoned mansion on the outskirts of the city. The briefcase was hidden there, in a vault beneath the mansion, but the syndicate had already arrived. As Ava, Marcus, and Eliza approached the mansion, they could see the guards posted around the perimeter. They were heavily armed and prepared for a fight. We need to get inside without alerting them, Eliza whispered. If they know we're here, we're dead. Ava's heart raced. This was it, the final confrontation. If they could get the briefcase, they could expose the syndicate and bring justice for Lena. But if they failed, it would be the end. With careful precision, they made their way into the mansion, avoiding the guards and slipping through the shadows. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The vault was in the basement, hidden behind layers of security. As they reached the vault, Ava felt a surge of hope. They were so close. But just as they began to open the vault, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. The syndicate had found them. Get the briefcase, Ava shouted as she and Marcus drew their guns, ready for a fight. Gunfire erupted as the syndicate guards stormed the basement. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, and the air was filled with the deafening sound of combat. Ava and Marcus fought with everything they had, but they were outnumbered, just as it seemed like they would be overwhelmed. Eliza managed to crack the vault. She grabbed the briefcase and shouted, "We've got it! Let's go. With the briefcase in hand, they made a desperate dash for the exit, bullets flying past them. They reached the main door, just as more guards swarmed the mansion. Go, go, go! Marcus yelled as they dove into the waiting car, speeding away from the mansion. As the city lights blurred by, Ava clutched the briefcase in her lap. They had done it. They had the evidence that could bring down the syndicate. But as the adrenaline began to fade, Ava realized that their fight was far from over. They had the briefcase, but now they had to survive long enough to use it. And with the syndicate still hunting them, survival was anything but guaranteed. The truth was finally in their hands, but at what cost? Part 6, the final part. The streets of the city seemed more hostile than ever, the rain now a constant companion, washing away the blood but not the danger. Every corner Ava and Marcus turned seemed to be crawling with shadows. With Marcus nursing a wounded shoulder, they couldn't afford any more mistakes. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. After limping away from the encounter with Officer King, they found temporary refuge in an abandoned hotel on the outskirts of the city. The walls were peeling, the air was thick with dust, and the dim lighting made it feel like a place forgotten by time. Perfect for hiding. Ava bandaged Marcus's shoulder as best she could, her mind racing with questions. Who was behind this elaborate setup? Who was the puppet master pulling the strings of people like Officer King? And most importantly, who could they still trust? Marcus groaned as she tightened the bandage. We can't stay here long. Ava nodded. We need to find that briefcase. Whatever's in there, it's the only leverage we have left. She pulled out the list of names she had found among Lena's files. Every name on the list was crossed out, except for theirs. And now, Officer King's name was scratched out too. He had been dealt with, but the syndicate would not stop there. There was one place left that they hadn't checked yet. A high-security vault hidden in an upscale club, where all of the city's darkest secrets were stored. It was time to break in. Disguised and moving under the cover of night, Ava and Marcus entered the club through a side entrance. The air was heavy with the scent of expensive cigars and whispered deals. Wealthy patrons danced and laughed, unaware of the deadly game being played just beneath their feet. Using a combination of Lena's old hacking tools and Marcus's knowledge of the underground world, they made their way past security and descended into the basement. The vault was guarded by thick metal doors and advanced electronic security, but this was their last shot. Ava worked furiously to bypass the locks while Marcus stood guard, his wounds slowing him down, but his determination unwavering. With a final click, the vault door swung open. Inside was the briefcase they had been chasing for so long. But before Ava could grab it, a voice rang out from behind them. Well done, Ava. I didn't think you'd make it this far. Ava froze, recognizing the voice immediately. It was a voice that had been so familiar, so close to her all this time. It was her father. Ava's heart raced as she turned to face him. Her father, Charles Carter, stood in the doorway, flanked by armed men. His face was calm, his eyes cold and calculating. Gone was the loving father she had known growing up. In his place stood the mastermind behind everything. You? Ava's voice broke. You're behind this? Charles stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. Did you really think you could play this game and not get caught in the web? This was never about the briefcase, Ava. It was about control, power. He motioned to the briefcase that contained secrets powerful enough to bring down governments, to destroy criminal empires. And I couldn't let anyone else have it. Not you, not Marcus, not anyone. Marcus leveled his gun at Charles. You killed Lena. You killed all of them, didn't you? Charles shrugged. They were in the way, just like you are now. Ava's mind was reeling. All this time, she had been fighting an invisible enemy, unaware that the real threat had been within her own family. Her father had manipulated everyone. King, Lena, Marcus, and even her. But now, it was time to end it. Charles's men moved to surround them, guns raised. Ava glanced at Marcus, who gave her a small nod. They had been through too much to give up now. In one fluid motion, Ava grabbed the briefcase and kicked it across the floor toward Marcus, who fired his gun at the guards, taking down 2 of them in quick succession. Chaos erupted in the vault as gunfire filled the air. Ava ducked behind a pillar, her heart pounding in her ears. She had always known her father was a man of secrets, but she never imagined he was capable of this. Now, he was trying to eliminate her, the only family he had left. As Marcus continued to exchange fire with the remaining guards, Ava saw her chance. She lunged toward her father, disarming him in a quick, calculated move. For a moment they struggled, the weight of years of betrayal pressing down on her. "Why?" she whispered, her voice full of pain. "Why would you do this?" Charles looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Because the world is cruel, Ava, and only those who control the shadows survive." Ava's grip tightened. "I won't let you hurt anyone else." With a final, desperate surge of strength, Ava twisted the gun out of his hands and threw him to the ground. The gun clattered away as Charles lay there, his chest heaving with labored breaths. The guards were all down, and Marcus stood over them, breathing heavily. It was over. With Charles in custody and the briefcase finally in their hands, Ava and Marcus had won. The contents of the briefcase were handed over to authorities, exposing a network of corruption that stretched further than they ever could have imagined. Governments were shaken, criminal empires toppled, and the city was finally free of the grip of those who had ruled it from the shadows. As for Ava, the victory felt hollow. She had lost too much along the way. Lena, her trust in the people closest to her, and most of all, her father. He would spend the rest of his life in prison, a fallen king in a game he thought he could control. But as she stood on the rooftop of the city, the wind blowing through her hair, Ava realized that she had gained something too: her freedom. She no longer had to live in fear, constantly looking over her shoulder. She and Marcus could finally breathe. "What's next?" Marcus asked, standing beside her, his arm still bandaged from the bullet wound. Ava smiled faintly. "I don't know, but whatever it is, we'll face it together." They had survived the blood and the shadows, and now they were ready for the light, the end.